as I'm sure you're all aware, the whole Palestine situation has been it's gone up another notch again. Like in the past, okay, well, by the time this comes out, I guess in the past couple of weeks. So we thought it would be important to talk about it a little bit, not too much. Just kind of touching upon it. It's a very large topic that, yeah, we're not experts on by any means. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of different avenues that you can be an expert on when it comes to this, from politics, geopolitics, religion, race, culture, you name it. There's a lot. So, yeah, I mean, we just wanted to kind of just touch upon a little bit of the history, just to give a little bit of context for perhaps if there's anyone out there who doesn't really know it, and then kind of just to talk about some of our views about it, and our support for the certain aspects of it, which we'll go into. So the first thing I think is important to give a little bit of context on is kind of the history of what happened. So, in an incredibly large nutshell. What is it again?
It's fine.
Yeah, we'll go with
that. In a nutshell.
Yeah. That's it. In a large nutshell, made very small. Come World War One, Ottoman Empire collapses. No thanks to Mr. T.E. Lawrence himself, Lawrence of Arabia, sent by the UK, the British Empire, to infiltrate essentially Saudi and go against the Ottomans and bring that down. From there, you kind of fast forward to World War II, and of course, all the abhorrent things that Hitler did, that very, very evil person, and the way he essentially exterminated, Jews pretty much off the face of the planet. So that happened, and then obviously from there, Britain then had an ownership of Palestine in their empire, and following the displacement and the murder and the Holocaust and the genocide of Jews in Europe, they then kind of decided to give a home to those Jews in Palestine at the time. British controlled Palestine. And from there, something called the Nakba occurred, which was essentially 700,000 Palestinians displaced, Muslims and Christians. And from there on out, it's just been a long day. It's just been a very long day since then. Fighting began for that land, obviously due to essentially being forcefully and unconsensually taken away from the Palestinians. And I'll put a map on the edit now, another job for me, on how the land has changed over time.
Video editor has to do video editing.
Yeah, it's crazy. And how the land has changed basically since then, and how it's gone from being very large to being incredibly small, and now it's really only Gaza and some parts kind of scattered above that Palestinians can genuinely call their own, and the rest of it is owned by the Israeli
What
government.
did you say was what was the correct pronunciation of the capital city?
Oh, Gaza. That's the...
You rolled the G. I've never heard it like that.
Yeah.
Well, you're in Gaza, mate.
Gaza.
Bro, you go on BBC and they're like Gaza.
Bro, okay, pause. Very serious topic here, but have to be said. Gascoigne used to think all the Gaza headlines were about him. So
really?
Yeah,
well,
true story.
You're chatting, bro. There's no way.
True story. Look it up.
Shout out to Gaza. Both of them.
So true.
But yeah, so that's where they primarily are now. And so, yeah, I mean, many things have happened since then. And obviously the Palestinians being forced out of what was their lands. Again, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Palestinians being displaced. And they're obviously not going to like that if someone comes in and kicks them out. And so a lot of fighting has then occurred from there on out. Many laws have been passed over the time, kind of talking about from the Israeli government that has been in power. Kind of, there's just so many that have come over the times. But the reality is, kind of before Britain, as they do so well with their empire, shout out British Museum, as they like to do, they kind of allegedly, this is all alleged, like to go into certain areas and cause some trouble for their own benefit. And so, yeah, before the Nakba, which was again 700,000 Palestinians displaced, Jews, Muslims, and Christians lived in harmony in Palestine. Everything was good. Everything was Christian, as they have throughout history. There is a lot of an illustrious history between Jews and Muslims and Christians, specifically in the Golden Era, for those who are perhaps educated in that, which is a time of prosperity, but some may argue is the greatest period of prosperity in the human race in terms of the advancement of the human race. A lot happened during that period, and so yeah, as although Jews, Muslims, and Christians have fought against each other in things like the Crusades, they have lived in harmony and peace a lot more than they've been hating each other. But this kind of took that to a whole new level. But one thing I think we all want to make clear is that, I think this is why a lot of people get confused. We've been seeing a lot of people posting, solidarity for the Jews. We stand with the Jews. It's not about Jews and it's not about Muslims, which I think people forget, because I mean, they get a little bit uneducated in that sense. This is about Palestinians and Zionists. This isn't about Jews and Muslims. If it was, then Jews and Muslims wouldn't have been living in harmony in Palestine before Britain decided to kick 700,000 Palestinians out. It would have been a war zone before that, and it wasn't. It was peace. It was prosperity. It was good. It was calm. It was chilling. So it's not about Jews, and it's not about Muslims, and it's not about Christians. It's about Palestinians and Zionists. It just happens to be that the Zionists are Jews, but they're far right Jews. They're not Orthodox Jews. So when people say that they stand with the Jews, it's like, well, do you stand with the Orthodox Jews, the Reform Jews, the Conservatives Jews, the Constructionist Jews, the Zionist Jews? Which one? Because there's a lot of different types, and not all of them share the same opinion. And if you go to the streets of London or New York and you see the videos of many Orthodox Jews, they are in support of Palestine, and they are against the Zionist leadership that runs their country and has been doing so for the past 80 years, 80 odd years. So yeah, there's that, and I think that's very, very important. A lot of innocent lives are being spilled, and it's clear that we all know the 10 Commandments: "Thou shalt not kill," and it's very clear that Orthodox Jews are supporting of that. And even in Islam, it's very clear that taking one innocent life is as if you've killed all of mankind, and saving one innocent life is as if you've saved all of mankind. And so it runs deep in that sense. So I think that's a very important thing to kind of put a stake in the ground in regards to.
Killing's bad.
Yeah, but most importantly, that it's not about the Jews. So saying standing with Jews doesn't make awful lot of sense, to be completely honest. So that's, I guess, a little bit of history in that regard. But then we kind of come into what's going on right now. I guess the claims from both sides are, one, Israel is undertaking an ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. And I think this has been seen through a lot of different proofs. For example, they passed a law stating that Israel is the historic homeland of the Jewish people, and they have an exclusive right to national self-determination in it, meaning that it's their right to live in the country. They have exclusivity, and they can stake it as their own, and nobody else can. And if that's not a supremacy and ethnically motivated statement and law, then thinking one race has exclusivity over another when you never lived in there at one point and then all of a sudden you did, I think is kind of proof in the pudding. And that was met with a lot of international retaliation, but kind of meaningless in a little way because people don't really do anything about it, unfortunately, which we'll come into. But aside from that, there have been, at the time when the nakba happened in the late 40s, it was 1948, there are a lot of militant groups from Israel went into Palestinian lands and slaughtered villages. DASN was one of them, which they went into, and they just rounded them up and just slaughtered them like barbarically. But aside from that, Israel has been complicit in many genocides across the world. I think it's very important to say, the ones in Rwanda where they were arming the Hutu militia, then South African apartheid, where they're providing anti-riot vehicles and arms against the black population there, despite an arms embargo on South Africa during the apartheid, and they went against that. The Mayan genocide, the forces trained in Guatemala, they were trained by and armed by Israel, and there's hundreds of thousands murdered. And then very famously also the Bosnian and Croatian genocide over in sort of Eastern Europe, which killed over 200,000 Muslims in that region, which hurts Bosnians very deeply to this day, as it wasn't too long ago. And those perpetrators fled to Israel and they received citizenship. These things aren't hard to find if you're willing to look for them, and actually seek them out, which I think is important to say. Very recently, the Supreme Court passed a law. Well, not the Supreme Court; it's quite the opposite. Actually, the government passed a law where they could they could outlaw the Supreme Court, essentially, which was met by a lot of protests from what I can imagine are probably Orthodox Jews, the same who will probably be pro-Palestine. They got water cannoned on the streets for protesting against that peacefully. Again, it's not hard to find these things. So there's a lot, basically. There's a lot, Amnesty International, very large, one of the largest human rights organizations, determines and has said that Israel is an illegal occupation and it's a genocide and an ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, as well as countless amounts of Geneva Accords and United Nations and international laws that have been broken by Israel. A few of them are the occupation and their acquiring of it by force, breaks UN laws. There's settlements on occupied land. It's another Geneva Convention where they've been forcefully kicking Palestinians out of their houses and just taking them because they can. The practice of ethnic cleansing, which I think is one of the bigger ones, simply because Jews, unfortunately, like I mentioned, were at the hands of it by Hitler. And now the kind of coin's been flipped and now they're doing it on to others, which I think hurts a lot of people because you wouldn't imagine those who suffered from that would then become the perpetrators of that, which I think is important to say. But I don't, again, I guess we've kind of said that it's Jews, but it's not. It's Zionists, and those are two very, very different things. I guess from a religious perspective, Jews, Christians, Muslims are all Abrahamic religions. They're all Abrahamic faiths. They all believe in the same God. They all believe, in different ways. But the prophets and the messengers and the books are all the same, up until a point. So I think that's important to say that it's Zionist. It's not Jews. So that's very important. But yeah, so there's a lot of fake news that's been put out there and things that they've gone back on. Gaza is currently an open air prison, as said by Amnesty International and many other organizations. They've cut off water, they've cut off electricity. I believe they've dropped over 6,000 bombs in the space of like the last week on like it's like a 10 by 3 mile strip or something. Gaza it's incredibly small.
It's basically London Marathon.
Literally. And yeah, I mean, they've said, and I've had a few debates with people recently, and the argument that they give is, but unlike Hamas, which we will come on to in a second, Israel tells the citizens of Gaza to leave, to give them a chance to leave before they attack. It's like leave to where? A refugee camp. The borders of Gaza are controlled by Israelis forces, and there's blockades and you have to go in and out, and if they leave there they will just get displaced again like they kind of did in the rest of the country. So it's kind of like,
in fact they did post, I saw something which was kind of crazy, because how do we normally get notifications nowadays? Through the internet, right? You never really see notifications through post, but obviously the recent message that they sent out was for the north of Gaza to leave, right? I don't know if you saw this, and the way that they basically broadcast this message, and this was on ITV News, they basically just showed like pamphlets that they were just, I guess, chucking there. I don't know how it ended up there, but it is kind of crazy to see that information on a pamphlet. But anyway, you're right, because they were essentially saying you have to leave north of Gaza, which included like, I can't remember the hospital, Al-Aqsa, maybe, I can't remember. There's a hospital there, of course, in the north of Gaza, which is like the biggest one, like 2 hours to essentially leave before they start bombing again. And it's important to remember that, one, that's basically impossible. Number one, that's basically impossible. And two, what help? I mean, obviously, actually, I'll let you set Hamas. But that just being said, like, I mean, what can you do in 2 hours, innit?
And where are you gonna go? A refugee
Where are you
camp?
gonna
You've
go?
occupied the rest of the country, so
Because
it's like
yeah, and
where?
the exit from what I remember of the north of Gaza was also getting bombed earlier because we can't show any videos obviously,
Nah.
but there's a
Yeah.
video of like the them bombing them because they thought also that there might be potential Hamas people there. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. So
Yeah,
basically,
it's
the only
kind of.
border of north they're bombing as well. So you're pretty much stuck between a rock and a hard place.
What's been happening with um the like border crossing with Egypt, and what is Egypt's like perspective of all this?
I will come to that in a second because that is a whole other thing. Because it's not just Egypt; it's Jordan and many other areas as well. But the first thing I thought it would be important to focus on is Israel.
Hamas and
Uh,
Hamas. We need to
yeah,
talk
and
about
Hamas.
as well.
Right after Israel, because I think we fundamentally believe that's where it starts from, in terms of the nakba and the displacement of 700,000 Palestinians, and where it
Yeah, but
already stems from.
it is also important to say though, like obviously they, I mean, Jewish people, some I guess Zionists, I guess we'll keep it Zionists, but
Yeah.
obviously they think that they also have a religious right to the land as well because
Yep.
obviously children of Moses.
Yep.
So true Nakba, but also it's not like that was the big domino, but you know.
Absolutely, yeah. So it is important to say 100,000%, without a shadow of doubt, I think in anyone's mind, at least it should be. I'm sure it isn't in some people's minds, as always. But 100,000%, Jews have full right to live in the Holy Lands of Palestine. It's not even up for debate. I think anybody who debates that is also just ignorant and doesn't deserve a seat at the table, to be honest. 100,000% Jews have full right to that land. It's the land of Moses, it's the land of Abraham, it's the land of so many others that, again, like I said earlier, all Abrahamic faiths believe in 100%, like it was before the Nakba, before the British control. Jews, Christians, Muslims living in their peace and harmony, the way you can do in any country in the world if you wanted to, pretty much. Just, rock up and start a new life in. Absolutely, it should be the same in Palestine. It shouldn't just be just for them. It should be for anyone of any religion who wants to go there, the same way, again, any country is. So 100%. So yeah, that's exactly right. It's that's why I said it's never about the Jews or the Muslims. It's about the Zionists and it's about Palestinians, which I think summarizes it very well. That it's a lot of ignorance, I think, to say we stand with Jews when so many Jews are against it. It's kind of like, well, who are you standing for then? I think it's a bit silly to say. But yeah, so many international violations of human rights. Palestinian posts get silenced by social media, and the outreach is significantly less, and by governments, just complete silencing of those posts and people who kind of talk about it. Egypt, Jerry mentioned, apparently did warn Israel of an attack by Hamas before it actually happened, but it's funny because, for those who don't know, Israel has Mossad, which is literally arguably the world's best intelligence agency. So the fact they don't know a bunch of militants in Toyota pickups are coming to drop some bombs is kind of unbelievable, in a sense that it's not believable, rather than wow. The
Yeah,
other way around.
I think I
It
heard a
doesn't make any
report.
sense.
I think I heard a report. I could be wrong here about like Egypt intelligence also told them they
Exactly, yeah.
refused. Yeah,
So there's so many people are saying that allegedly they let the attack happen on purpose, so they would
conspiracy
have a
theory, but
reason
yeah,
to then. But I don't really want to get into that. I kind of want to just deal with the facts. But that's when it gets just a lot very messy, and there's no point in doing the finger blame when there's already so much to rely on in terms of factual information. Obviously, America is an ally of Israel, and Hamas is allied by Iran primarily, but I think there are some other countries, in terms of like Qatar, I think, can be one of them, and I believe Afghanistan as well, potentially. But obviously, the whole sort of Western world, if you will, and majority do back Israel. But it's funny because the US are currently about to give $6 billion to Iran, for some prisoners, which they've delayed a long time and they haven't given. And now all of a sudden they've said that it's not frozen anymore. A White House spokesperson said, which just again, I guess it's kind of rhetorical questions just to make you think. Why would they give $6 billion to Iran, who fund Hamas, when Israel is funded by the US? Doesn't really make sense to fund the enemy, except if you just want to cause hell and be self-serving. It's a bit sus to play both sides, but that's, I think, another important thing to say. And like just Senator Joe Biden said, if there wasn't an Israel, we'd have to invent one to protect our interests. And I think here in the UK, if you're holding a Palestinian flag, you can be arrested. I've seen people who have been arrested on social media. They've blocked off the Israeli embassy from protests, which I don't know if they've done before for other protests, but yeah, if you're wearing a mask, you can also be arrested, which is funny in a post-C world. It's another meme.
Sorry.
But yeah, so there's a lot there. So that again, there's a lot to get into. Talk, I guess, enough on that part, but that's the viewpoint I think at least that we have, and I think a lot of people have in regards to Israel. Now, coming on to the other side of the coin, Hamas. Dickheads. Right? This needs to be said 100%. What they do is unacceptable. It's abhorrent. I believe it's the same word I used for Israel's behavior too. It's they kill innocents. That is a fact.
What are they? Should we say what they are first?
Hamas is a Palestine. I think it's a bit of a mixture, but essentially like a Palestinian resistance militant group, I guess you could call it. Terrorists, many would call it, but then I think it's safe to flip that coin and say Israel too. I believe the definition for terrorism is causing terror for political advantages and political aim. Which I think is fair to say both sides, if you're saying Hamas and the Israeli government, do. I guess the argument is just who does it worse, which you can decide for yourselves. But yeah, so
does Hamas have any ties to the Palestinian government, or is it just like random separatists?
So,
well,
yeah. So from what I know, the Palestinian government, at least the internationally recognized Palestinian government, is the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, and then Hamas is like another, if you want to think about it from that perspective, like another group that wants to be in charge, sort of thing. So it's like an opposing political party, if you want to put it that way. But obviously, the militia rather than a democratic party, right? So it's a take by force sort of thing. I don't know how the dynamic works between all of them. I'm not going to pretend to know. All I know that
you don't know about Palestinian international politics. You don't know about Palestinian politics.
But I think that doesn't exist yet. That one, yeah, where they don't have a seat at the table. But yeah, Hamas, I think it's important. Whole and undoubted condemnation for their behavior. Their killing of civilians, their inhumane treating of them. Although I have seen very humane treating as well from Hamas, there is still a lot of inhumane treating, as I'm sure there is also humane treating from some IDF soldiers. Absolutely, I'm not going to sit here and be ignorant to that, as much as there also is inhumane treating as well. So yeah, they're waste men, basically, and I'd rather they didn't, but it's kind of that thing where it's like Palestinian people have been kicked down for 75 years. You can't expect them not to lash back, especially when Hamas are the only ones on the ground fighting for the Palestinians in that sense, in terms of a physical sense, while Israel has the backing of the entire world and so many billions and billions and billions of dollars.
You can't expect someone to say from Palestine, someone to break off from the norm and be like, yeah, we're gonna go shoot someone. Like,
but it wouldn't be an excuse to hurt civilians.
No. I'm saying, but it's not Palestine. It's people within, like, people. Yeah,
it's kind of the same way you say it's not Jews, it's Zionists. It's not Palestinians.
Exactly.
It's Hamas. So that's important. I said, and with that, fuck Israel. I mean, well, yeah, that, but fuck Egypt and Saudi and Pakistan and Jordan and all of these Gulf countries and Middle Eastern countries around them that close their borders to Palestinian refugees. In a way it's bad, but in a way it's good, because if they did become refugees in other countries, then there would be no Palestinians left, would there? Really? So I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword in that regard. But they
That's a
haven't
sticky. Yeah,
supported.
that's a whole other
Yeah,
thing.
they don't. They
Yeah.
don't support the way they could and the way they should.
Yeah.
I guess just corrupt leaders.
So do the Gulf countries recognize Palestine as a nation or what?
You tell me.
I mean,
honestly.
Qatar does, right? Qatar's one of them.
They recognize it one day, and then the next day they're doing negotiations with Israel. So it's like, yeah, cheers, mate. Real helpful. Real helpful. They basically just don't help. I think Iran, obviously, with Hamas, but that's not exactly the type of good help in any way.
Not Qatar. Does Qatar not?
Qatar, they put out that they're going to stop world gas supply if Israel don't chill out. But again, I don't know. It's hard to say to what degree that's bullshit. So I believe it when I see it, right? But they're all and that, I think that's the main problem, is that if it wasn't for those around the world, and I've seen some friends who are on holiday in like Rome, and the people who are in Jordan and stuff, and obviously in the UK and so many countries around the world who are protesting out in the streets. If it wasn't for those who protest and raise that Palestinian flag high into the sky, Palestine would probably be wiped off the face of the planet by now. It would have been forgotten about, just like Syria and Lebanon and Libya and Venezuela and Afghanistan and so many, Myanmar and so many other places in the world have just been destroyed and left to rubble.
Basically, everyone you just mentioned, the US is involved in.
And that's kind of like the logic, right? It's like if the US, and everyone knows it. This is the funny thing, right? Everyone knows the US has invaded all these countries and left them to rubble and said peace out. And it's like, well, if the US aligned themselves with all of these countries, and they're bad when they align Israel, do you not think that's also bad then? It kind of just doesn't add up.
I think Joe Biden's a Zionist, though. Like, I'm going to look it up right now, but I feel like I've heard him say I'm a Zionist.
That's a wild statement. You gotta fact check that one, bro. That's wild.
I'm like flipping.
The guy that can normally not say a coherent sentence then just says I'm a Zionist.
Joe Biden says he's a Zionist in my heart. Zionist in my heart, but Biden's devotion to Israel faces a new test. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So he has said that.
Well, coming from your president, that's...
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean.
So what's the current state for Palestinians? Like, what are the choices that they have? Because I heard there's basically all their supplies are running out as well, and
they've cut off water and electricity to Gaza under the guise of we don't want to give water and electricity to our enemies, Hamas.
Right. So that means there's basically limited time unless humanitarian aid comes by.
There is humanitarian aid on the ground in Gaza. There is, but I mean, 6,000 bombs in a week. What are you gonna do? It's not really much you can do. So it's just like they are in places like Ramallah and Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, and dotted around other places in like main Israel, like the religious areas and stuff. But the main place they live is Gaza, and that's just right now just getting absolutely. It was already rubble, but now it's just like.
And why is it that? I don't know. I mean, I'm not too educated on it, but normally, when you have, like, let's use an example of Russia-Ukraine, right? Normally, when you have two nations fighting over something, the more powerful nation that starts the invasion or starts the war wants to take over that land and make it their own. But it doesn't seem like Israel wants Palestine. They just want to abolish that place to ever exist. Why do they not want to?
I don't think that's entirely true, because I'm also very uneducated on this. Maybe we can rehash this topic and get an expert, if you know what I'm saying, as maybe an independent adjudicator.
Both sides.
Yeah, so I think there's also the terminology of like settlers, which are people who believe that's their own land.
Yep.
Hamza, are you going to go into this?
Well, no, I mean, I could talk about it if you want for the best of my knowledge.
Sure.
But again, by no means
I
an
was
expert either.
quickly off Jay's point. The point that's being made is it's not just about invading the country. It's about cleansing. It's about getting rid of the people. So it's not just about, do we want to move into this area and take it over? It's more about, we want to wipe these people off the face of the planet so they don't exist no more.
But Jay's also saying land. Jay's saying land, right?
But
And I'm saying,
but the thing is, I feel like Israel are happy to level the land because they have so much money coming in from the West that they can just rebuild it again.
Yeah, that's what I'm
But
saying.
but if you see it as, but if I mean, clearly Israel don't see it like this, right? But if everyone around the world sees Palestine as the like start of the holy stuff, like being that one single place where everything comes from, Israel absolutely bombing the hell out of it is kind of
Well,
going
the
against
religious areas are the areas that don't get touched. Gaza is all tucked away
Jerusalem.
into a corner, basically.
Right,
Yeah, that's
I
okay.
swear
Jerusalem, yeah.
Palestinians are all in Gaza, like a lot of big
essentially
concentration.
a
It's a
majority of them,
prison.
yeah.
It's an open air prison. There's people blocked into one area and they can't leave. There's blockades everywhere.
And I believe like 40% are like kids.
There's so
50,
many children
wasn't it?
dying.
40 to
50.
60. I can't remember.
The sad
yeah.
thing about this, yeah, my immediate reaction is obviously, I mean, it's very tragic to all the civilians, obviously, it goes without saying. But the other thing is just like the respite, which is the fact that, like, you can understand that these children are now going to grow up and become radicalized. Like, it's not hard to imagine, right? I feel
Hamas,
like
bro.
that's, I mean, like,
A lot of Hamas. That's
by
basically
their
what it is,
by their
and vice versa.
perspective, exactly that. By their perspective, they'll enroll into the freedom fighter role naturally, right? Which in itself is obviously wrong, but it's like, I mean, it's obvious, right?
Can you blame him? Can you help
You
it?
push
Yeah,
someone
it's
into
one
a
of them
corner.
ones.
Push someone
Yeah.
into a corner.
It's one of them ones, literally, and also it's like, you know, there's things like, you know, you try and defend your own land, which is the most like very
Primal.
humane trait, right? Yeah, very
Yeah.
primal thing. So you can completely understand that they'd be radicalized by it. That's like the thing that makes me sad about, for the most part. Like, I guess maybe not the primary effect of all this stuff going on, but like years down the line now, the survivors, you know, it's just cultivating a new group, a new generation.
I think it's safe to say like we're all educated to different lengths on it, but we're still also learning a lot about it as we go on. But just from like to bounce off what Massam just said, from a humanitarian aspect, it's just so fucking tragic how many children are dying on both ends. Like both sides, people are dying every single day, every single minute. Like the videos online, a lot of them are getting blocked. But if you see some of them,
Bro, I could
they-
not. I honestly can't.
it's gut wrenching, bro.
First of all, I
genuinely gut wrenching.
I hate like the gore porn stuff anyway. I never watch it, right? But like when you involve also children and all that death, no way.
It's
I don't want to
fucking
see that.
tragic.
It's horrific. Which is why, like, yeah. I mean, you know, the reports you were talking about, potential fake news or not, about the 40 children,
Yep.
40 Israeli
Beheading,
children,
the
I don't
Hamas
know.
was beheading babies,
Yes.
and then they turned around and said, "Oh yeah, we don't actually know about
We
that."
can't confirm.
Is
Yeah.
that? I might be wrong here, but I feel like I saw an article from like Jerusalem Post saying it did happen.
I believe from what I've seen, the Israeli government then turned around and be like, "Yeah, we don't actually know about that anymore."
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
I mean, I've seen some babies with no heads on both.
But that's my
ends.
point. That's kind of my point. Is you so obviously that's been like the big headline, main point of attention. Is it true? Is it not? Right? And I've seen loads of people.
I'm sure it is true
essentially saying-
statistically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm saying, and loads of people have
It's not
said
the
it's
dumb,
true.
innit?
Yeah, it's true. Case in point, this video, and I'm like, hell no, I'm not watching this.
Yeah,
I'm
no
not
way.
looking at that.
No.
It's sad. It's very sad. And the thing is, it's just there's so many war crimes. There's so many
Yeah.
like white phosphorus being released recently or something.
They talked
Um,
about it on the BBC and they cut it off.
They cut it off exactly. They cut it off
White
on the
phosphorus is
BBC.
a war crime and a half, man.
That's
There's just
like,
so
Worse
many
than napalm, apparently.
violations. There's so many violations of Geneva Accords and international human rights that have been acknowledged by the United Nations.
no one does
Diddly,
shit,
diddly
bro.
squat. Nothing.
yeah, but if
Radio
we're being
silence.
honest, if the international police force backs you,
UN soldiers getting
it
killed.
doesn't happen. Yeah, I know. I saw that. Yeah, like
But, I mean, I think we've all seen the UN. are a
six
pile of
UN
bollocks.
diplomats or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, when America's in your corner, you can basically do a lot of stuff. Is the reality, is the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
You know,
So
the
fucking
crazy
sad,
thing
man.
is, the crazy thing is, I've completely lost my train of thought. Sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. It's
Yeah.
tough. It's very tough to even like talk about. It's very tough to like think about.
I've just
Fucking
walking around completely
scary.
drained for like the last week. I just have no energy. It's at an all-time low.
It's hard
Just
to
can't be
open
asked because it's just
social
like
media.
it's like Libya, Syria, Lebanon, Pakistan, Yemen, the largest humanitarian crisis in the world. Like, at what point, in a way, like, are Muslims going to stop being targeted? Because I think it's safe to say that the countries in the world that are getting absolutely demolished the most are in the Middle East and North Africa, and they are Muslim countries. And it's just like the religious cleansing, in a way, if you want to think about it that way.
The
Rather
Uyghur
than
Muslims as well.
ethnic, yeah. And it's just like, and there's so much. I thought I just rinsed so many countries that are Muslim countries: Saudi, Egypt, Jordan, Pakistan, that are just completely complicit of letting this happen and letting it slide. Which you can't say for the other side because they back each other, right? Which is sad reality. Right? There's like, yeah, I mean, we're talking about those that are in charge of Israel and the Zionist government, and some of the stuff I've seen from their leadership is just like, did all these Zionists, I'm going to call them Zionists because they're not Jews, because Jews who are Orthodox, who follow the Torah, the teachings of Moses, they don't kill innocent people. They don't abuse innocent people. They respect all cultures, creeds, religions. Judaism, Christianity, Islam are the same 99%. You don't harm innocent people. You respect everyone's religious rights, their beliefs, to follow whatever their religion they want. They can do whatever they want, however they want, as long as they just do not terrorize society and innocent people. They're free to practice whatever religion they adhere to, and they just spit on Christian pilgrims as they walk past and hurl abuse at them. And then the Minister of National Security turns around and says, "Oh, this is an old tradition." And it's like, if your government is turning around saying, "Oh, spitting at innocent pilgrims, it's just an old tradition, don't worry about it," like, I just struggle to see why people can't add 1+1 together sometimes, and it just doesn't make sense. And another
Because
thing
they don't want to equal.
yeah,
They don't want it to equal two,
they don't
bro.
want it to
That's
equal
why.
two. And there's another thing I found which kind of wanted to end it on this, unless anybody has anything else we want to talk about, because I guess we could be here all day. But like, there was a former prime minister of Israel. I might butcher this pronunciation here. I don't speak Hebrew, but Yitzhak Rubin.
Is this a Sky News one?
This is old. This was a lot older, this guy.
Okay.
But yeah, his name's Yitzhak Rubin, and he was a former PM of Israel. I think he worked himself up from other positions, and he signed peace declarations with the Palestinians, again, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, who is the internationally recognized government the Palestinians founded, or at least led visionary by someone called Yasser Arafat, who was, if you're trying to talk about this Palestine issue and you don't know who Yasser Arafat is, it's like having a conversation about football and you don't know the offside rule. You don't have a right and a bad opinion. Like, it's the only way to put it. And I guarantee, and there's some people that I've talked to who they'd look at me like it's a cricket player. I think it's one who had a similar name. Like, they wouldn't have a clue. It's genuinely like trying to have a chat about football and you don't know what the offside rule is. It's like, why are you talking about it? You don't have any right to talk about it. You're completely uneducated. And so this Yitzhak Rubin was a former PM of Israel, and he signed a peace declaration with the Palestinians, something called the Oslo Accords. And he was assassinated after that. And he was hated publicly by the current Israeli Defense Minister Ben-Gvir, who was also the one that said, "Go for it, spit on Christians, it's old tradition," which was a minority thing done in secret, by the way, back in the day when it did happen. But Ben-Gvir hated that person who did it, and Benjamin Netanyahu, who essentially leads up the country, also hated him. Benjamin Netanyahu stated how much he hated Rubin on making peace with the enemy referring to Palestinians, and the far right rallies that Benjamin Netanyahu went to also referred to Rubin at the time as a Nazi. And Ben-Gvir seen on interview back then, which is the 80s, 90s or something, where he is holding up an ornament from Rubin's car stating, "We got to his car, we'll get to him too." And they were both just publicly absolutely against him. I don't know if they knew each other at the time, but they were both against him in their own ways. And this peace treaty was signed with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the internationally recognized leader of the Palestinian people, not a terrorist organization like Hamas. It was their government, their people elected government. And Ben and Ben have always been against the peace treaty, as it says here. And the thing that boggles my mind is when you have these two leaders of Israel saying that Palestinian people are the enemies and those who make peace treaties with them are Nazis, then for those who say, oh, if Hamas just stopped, then peace can be made, like, what do you say now? Like, peace was signed with the real leaders of the Palestinians, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, as seen by international law and international viewpoints. So if a peace treaty can't be signed with Hamas because they're terrorists, and then a peace treaty by those same leaders can't be signed with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, then who can the peace treaties be signed with then?
It's not going to happen, mate.
It just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. And that's out there in public knowledge. It's not hard to find. Give yourself 30 seconds. I've seen the video. It didn't take me long to find it all. And people still think that these leaders are not there to commit an ethnic cleansing or a genocide.
It's fucking tragic. It's sad to see this kind of stuff happening, full stop. And yeah, like we don't stand for that kind of stuff. Like people dying to that extent, babies, children dying on both ends. It's fucking tragic. So
no innocent human being should
Blood.
die in a war. That is not the ethics of
Yeah.
war. That is not the ethics of how it should be done. It's just
Yeah.
Israel, Zionists have Hamas, absolutely, the other Middle Eastern countries, the other Western world countries that are all complicit in this, either by action or inaction. I think the day will come when they're all held accountable, and I don't think they want to be around for when that day happens, but they want to have a choice. And I think there's enough information out there for people to see, but I think the reality is, like, Jews, Christians, and Muslims live together in harmony for centuries and for thousands of years. They, by definition, love each other, care for each other like brothers and sisters. They all follow the same prophets, the same messengers, the same rules. As a Muslim, we believe in the Torah, we believe in the gospel, we believe in the Bible, we believe in the Testament, we believe in every single one of those books and every single one of those people who brought it to these lands and to this earth. Innocence should never die. Hamas, horrible.
Condemned.
Zionist government, horrible. The ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, inexcusable. The violation of human rights, inexcusable. And I think anybody out there who says we stand with Jews has no understanding of the millions of Orthodox Jews that stand for Palestine, that are on the roads of London and Rome and New York and Paris campaigning against the Zionist government. Those who are inside Israel protesting peacefully and being water cannoned against the Zionists that we don't hear about because the media shuts it all down. I think those are the voices that need to be heard. And I think if you want to have an opinion, but if you can't and you don't know some basic people and some basic things, then I feel like it's better to just keep opinions to yourself, to be honest with you.
People never do that,
They
though.
never will.
100%.
People love saying uneducated opinions.
Yeah.
People
And
love
the
jumping on
sad thing is-
podcasts.
But
Carry on.
People love,
yeah.
saying their
People
opinion is
love-
true.
A lot of
The
the
sad
time, it's not.
realities-
Sorry, go on. Go on.
No, you
I
go,
was
Jay, you
just
go.
going to say, a lot of the time, it's not even. People say uneducated opinions because of naivety as well, not because on purpose, right? It's like
100%.
if all you
Uneducated.
see is biased media, then your opinions are going to be biased as well. So a lot of the
100%.
time, not because you want to.
My favorite is when you see reports of killed versus dead.
Yeah. Oh, the media.
I
Yeah.
haven't even seen that.
Yeah.
They've been doing figures and stuff of killed versus.
Yeah,
dead.
100,
The-
100 killed in Israel, 500 dead in Gaza.
Mm,
Yeah.
interesting.
Right.
Wow. From the
But
river
yeah.
to the sea,
The sad reality is,
Palestine will be
I
free.
don't know how.
God's will.
Sad reality is, I don't know how or what needs to be done for there to be a conclusion. I don't know how there is a.
I think it takes the standing
We
up
won't know.
of Jordan and Egypt and Qatar and Pakistan to actually
Yeah,
stand
but
up for the
they're
Palestinian
never gonna do
people.
that, are they,
And
bro?
until they do,
They love money.
until they don't,
We don't want to, keep you here for too much longer, and
yes.
we don't want to end on a bad note either. But that is the taste that's been left in the world's mouth at the moment. So
Do we have any?
taste it, bruv.
Do we have any? I mean, Hamza's like done a lot of good educating and stuff and putting words out there. Are there any like links to research that we have that we could just put? On
There
the
actually
social media,
is.
right?
Yeah, I put in the chat.
Also,
Maybe
we'll
can-
put that. We'll put that on the social media. I'll put a link up. We'll put a link up
To be in the
together
bio as
and
well, in the description.
oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, we'll chuck in a bio, and yeah, please do get educated on it, like we have been trying to, and let us know your opinions. But yeah, thank you for listening. Hope you guys all been well. Take care of yourselves. And yeah, this has been Atypical. See you guys next week.